Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasulil Kareem, amma ba'd, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another episode of Sira Khatam Nabiyyin, the biography of the seal of the prophets, the biography of the seal of prophethood, none other than Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I left you in the last episode introducing a quite vivid tale which I will be able to share with you this week or today, which was about a vision which the king had. And this is the king of Yemen, and he has this vision, Rabia as he is referred to. And in this vision he saw, and he was the king of Yemen, and this vision that he experienced, he was quite startled by it, and he was in awe, and he wanted to get a better understanding. I will now share that with you in great detail as it's been recorded. It says that Rabi' ibn Nasr, who was a king of Yemen, and he had the lineage of the Tuba kings. He had a vision, as I mentioned, which he put him in awe and it actually terrified him. So what he did was, the people of knowledge as they were perceived in those days, the soothsayers, the magicians, the individuals who used to throw birds in the air, in the sky, and see which direction they went in, the star readers or the star foretellers, all individuals who carried, and obviously what the soothsayers would do is have either some bones and stones inside a vessel which they would shake and then throw on the ground, and then depending on how that would fall. Now you see, for example, people can be tea readers. They'll give you a cup of tea, and then with the tea leaves in the bottom, they'll be able to tell what's going to happen, or they claim what they can tell what's going to happen in the future. People are palm readers. They look at the lines on your palms and say, well, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Or a crystal ball. People look inside a crystal ball and tell you what's going to happen. So soothsaying has become slightly more developed, as everything else in the world. But in essence, if we go to the root of it, then it's the same. It's individuals who claim that they have knowledge of the unseen. This is the claim. And as I discussed in the last episode, we know that the only being that has knowledge of the unseen is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the only one who has knowledge of the unseen. Obviously, he shares that with some of his chosen servants. Those chosen servants are Anbiya, Rusul, prophets, messengers, which are sent onto this earth for a particular task. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shares some knowledge with them in order for them to be able to do their job properly and be able to call people towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will perform miracles. Miracles being something which goes against the laws of physics, chemistry and biology, in order to get the attention of the people, so they know that this individual is special, because we only listen to special people. People who we perceive to be same as us or lesser than us, we don't follow, we don't listen to. But people who we perceive to be superior than us, people who have shown their superiority, then we're more than happy to follow them and listen to them. So when this king gathered together soothsayers, magicians, these individuals who have these birds which by the flight of the bird determine what's going to happen, star fortune tellers, whatever, they were all gathered together. And they were all gathered together. He said to them that I'm having visions which are both amazing at the same time and scary, frightening. What I want you to do is I want somebody to interpret them for me. Well, they said, that's fine. Tell us what dreams you're having and tell us what visions you're having and we'll interpret them for you. He said, no. Obviously, if I was to tell you what's going on, then I'm not going to be absolutely certain that you are giving me a true interpretation. You may just, by what I say, guess at best and guesstimate and say, we think this means this, this means that. If you are true soothsayers, if you truly have some access to knowledge, then you'll be able to tell me even before I mention what I'm seeing. I already mentioned as well in the last episode, because I feel it's important to mention at this juncture, that knowledge of the unseen only exists with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how is it these soothsayers are going to share some of the information that they're going to share? One means could be, as we've mentioned, is that the jinnat that these soothsayers had under their power, like witches and wizards do, they have them under their power, under their authority, to be able to then control them. And when they control them, they enslave them. And these individuals, these jinnat, can move at the speed of light and be able to go places where humans can't go. And they are then hearing knowledge and information as it's being shared for the angels who are tasked to carry out these particular practices and events. So that could be, the only source that comes to mind. So they, once this was put to them, obviously most of these soothsayers and magicians didn't really have anything to say because they can't remember, they don't know how these, what visions the king was having. So what they said was, one individual said, well look, there are two individuals, one is Shiq and Satih, and these individuals are probably the best as you can get. They are the creme de la creme of the soothsayers department. So if you call for them, if you ask for them, then I'm sure they'll be able to tell you. So the king, as was instructed by his council, called these two individuals over, and the conversation went as follows. So the king said that I am experiencing visions which are both frightening me, causing me to be frightened and also scared and amazed at the same time. Tell me what they are first of all, and if you are right, then you can go ahead and interpret them. So Satih spoke first, and he said, I'll tell you. He says, you saw fire emerge from the darkness, which then fell on a low ground, and it consumed every living thing with a skull. That's the experience. That's what you've had. The king was quite. There's a vision you've had, and the king was quite surprised and shocked at the same time. And he said, "That's exactly correct. You've not made a single error. That's exactly what my vision is." So he says, "Okay then, Satih. Now that you've got the vision, tell me, how do you interpret it?" So Satih said that, I swear by all the snakes between the two stony plains, that is, this is interpreted to mean that Abyssinians will come to your land and they will reign over it between Abyan and Jurash. So this is a sign, basically, the destruction, the fire, the coming from the darkness, meaning fire is detrimental, it's pain, it's coming from a place which you don't expect it to, from far away. The darkness is representing that. And it will consume every living being with a skull. Skull, we see pirates using skulls. We see, soothsayers and magicians and, the evil arts and the darknesses. Skulls is there to reflect that kind of life. So this is what skulls is meaning, is that it's destruction. So obviously when the king heard that, that wasn't good news. So he said, look, that angers and upsets me greatly. Will this occur in my time, or will it happen after I've died? Because, I guess when you're dead, it doesn't really concern you too much. But when you're alive, people feel a little bit more perturbed by that. So Satih said no. He says this will happen a lot later, after about 60, 70 years have passed. So he then asks, okay, he says, okay, so I'll be long gone, that's fine, but how long will their kingdom, how long will their dominion, how long will their authority last on the surface, on our lands? And Satih replied by saying it'll be around 70 years. And then they will be killed and they will be expelled and they will leave Yemen never to return again. So he said, who will then follow after that once the killing has been done and the expulsion has been done? Satih replied, he said, Iram Dhu Yazan will follow. He will come from Aden to fight them, and he will not leave any one of them in Yemen. And the king obviously now is on a roll, and Satih seems to be giving all the answers. So he posed another question. He says, what about his era? Will his era last a long time, or will his era cut short? He says, no, his will cut short as well. And so the king says, okay, so what will happen to him? Why is his cut short? What goes wrong? And Satih said that a prophet, pure, to whom revelation will come from, he will be the one who brings his kingdom and dominion to an end. So the king then said, and where will this prophet come from? So Satih replied and said that he will come from the family of Ghalib ibn Fihr ibn Malik ibn Nadr, and his rule will be with his people till the end of time. So that was an interesting question, which the king responded by saying, does that time end? We've always assumed the world just carries on and on and on and on. Does actually the world come to an end? Is there a point where, as we see around us, doesn't exist anymore? Is it we go to a new abode? So Satih replied, he goes, yes, on that day, when the first and the last shall be assembled, and the good will be happy, then obviously, and the evil will be dealt with, that will happen. So you can see from Satih's responses, one is about the prophecy of the prophet, another is about the end of days, another is about Yawm al-Qiyamah. You can see that he's making prophecies, if I use that word with a small p, or he's making predictions which actually are true. The question is, where is he getting this from? As I said, if which is most likely the case with Satih, is that he has jinnat under his authority, then these jinnat are the ones who are going up to the high heavens, to the point where they reach where the assembly of angels are, who are being given these tasks to go and take a person's life, or blow a soul into a woman's womb, or do this or do that or do the other. When they're being sent, then this is being discussed amongst the assembly of angels, and also bigger matters are being discussed, like the coming of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the end of days. These conversations will also be going on, and these jinnat are eavesdropping, and they're catching bits and bobs and coming back and mixing it up if they don't bring a lot of information, or if they have a lot they can present to their master in its full version. So again, the king asked, he says, what you're telling me, is it true? You're just making this up so that you win my favor, so that I put you on my council, or that I pay you handsomely? Is this true? And Satih responded by saying, yes, this is true. This is when Shik arrived, and the king spoke to him like he had spoke to Satih before, but he hid from him what he had seen from Shik. He didn't give him the answers that Shik gave. Reason being is he wanted to see if there was some correlation between the two of them, or was that just an opinion, and then Shik is going to give another opinion, and then he's got two potential opinions to choose from, and then that kind of doesn't give him the strength of conviction rather behind what they're saying, and he'll think, well, okay, he said this and he said that. Whereas if they both say the same thing, this is going to make him feel absolutely sure that neither have spoke to each other. I've not informed either one of them about it, and they're already mentioning the same thing. So he asked, and Shik responded by saying that you saw fire emerge from the dark, and it came and it would eat up every breathing creature. So slightly different terminology, but the point is the same. So as I said, he's understood that. So then he said to him that, okay, then the king knew that he was correct, because there's no chance the two haven't spoke to each other. How did they reach this conclusion, both of them? It's impossible. I've kept them separate. Clearly they've got one source, the information is coming from one source, and therefore it must be correct. So then once he had ascertained that, he then asked, okay, give me your interpretation. Tell me what it is that you saw. And he said, mentioned to him that the Africans, the blacks, would arrive, and they will come across the land, and they will reign over it between the Abyan and Najran. So again, the king responded in a similar way, saying that, look, this angers me and hurts me as well at the same time. Will that happen during my reign or after my reign? Shik also responded, he says, no, it will happen after. And then a great man will emerge from your people, and he will save them, and he will inflict such a defeat on your enemies that they will leave in disgrace. The king asked, who will this great savior be? And Shik said, he will be a young man who is guiltless and faultless, and he will come from the line of Dhu Yazan. He was asked again, how long will his reign be? Or rather, will his reign last long? He responded, no, it will not last long. It will be brought short by a messenger. And this messenger who will be sent, he will bring truth and justice, and he will come from a people of religion and virtue, in whom power shall reside until the day of separation. So he asked him, he says, what's this day of separation that you mention? He says, in this day the pious shall be rewarded, and the living and the dead will all be gathered together, and the pious will be victorious eventually, and they will be given reward. Similarly, to validate what Shik had said, he asked him again, is it what you're saying true? Do you fully believe in what you're sharing with me to be a fact? Similarly to Satih, Shik responded by saying, yes, it is absolutely true, and there is no way around it. This is absolute fact. So this obviously had a big impact on Rabi' ibn Nasr. He knew it, he believed it to be true. He was quite sure that it was highly unlikely that two of them would concoct this story together, especially since they'd been kept separate. So he acted upon it. And what he did, he provided for his family and relatives and sent them off towards Iraq in order for them to be protected, because he knew, if I'm safe, maybe my sons and daughters will be safe, but maybe my grandchildren won't be safe, because that's when the Abyssinians will attack. And if my grandchildren are safe, maybe my great-grandchildren won't be. So he knew it was going to be happening in 60 years, which is roughly 3 generations. So he wanted to make sure that his family moved now. So by the time the 3rd, 4th generation is around, when the Abyssinians will attack, his people, his family won't be there, and as such would not suffer the consequences. It's interesting, isn't it, how this individual got this information from these two soothsayers, and he acted on it virtually immediately. And we have the Quran and the Ahadith, and the Quran and the Ahadith are quite clear, mentioning about sins being punished and good deeds being rewarded, and the day of resurrection, and a barzakh, a place where we will go before the day of resurrection, and on the day of resurrection where questions will be answered and we will have to respond, where we will have to justify every single action, where we will have to justify every single penny earned and spent. Yet it doesn't move us. It doesn't bring that, it doesn't make us think that this is real, this is going to happen. There's no doubt about it. When ours is a revealed text which has been protected for 1400 years, which in itself is a miracle, that no other book has been protected in that way over such a long period of time, through so many different peoples of different cultures, ethnicities, through so many different eras. And really the world has been through so much change in terms of wars and battles and destruction. You'd have thought something like a text of that nature would have disappeared, as we've seen with other similar texts disappearing. But no, the text remains, and it remains in its perfect state as it did do at the time of revelation. Yet it doesn't move us to take those necessary steps. Here we see this king, for his worldly benefit for his children and his grandchildren, he takes such a big step where he parts company. He could have carried on living with them and just left them some information that when it's about 50 years from now, you all should move from here and go to another land. Why? No, I am not going to tell you why, but that's what you should do. And he, because of his belief, he took action. Whereas we're also being told time and time again, but that belief doesn't move us towards action. So we've got to look at our belief. How strong is our belief? How much do we truly believe? And the only way we're going to believe is if we start to go through those various stages. You can't just get belief almost immediately. You have to go through those various steps of becoming familiar with the predictions and the prophecies in the Quran and the Hadith. And then we've got to become a bit more familiar and start to know it and start to understand it. So not only do we recite the Quran, but we try to understand what the Quran is actually saying. We then study it maybe with a teacher as well, so we get a little bit more meat on the bones, until eventually our belief becomes strong and firm. And when it becomes strong and firm, and there's other ways of supporting that strength, dhikr, doing good deeds, will further strengthen it. Becoming more knowledgeable of the Prophet ﷺ and his ahadith will give us even more strength, until our iman becomes strong. So then our belief will actually have an impact on our actions. He wrote a letter to a Persian king called Sabur ibn Khurzad, and they were settled in Hira. So this is where they settled, and we saw, for example, that the children from Rabi ibn Nasr was an individual called Nu'man ibn Mundhir, who was a son, and also a son of Nu'man, which of Ibn Mundhir, Ibn Amr ibn Adi. And this Nu'man was the viceroy over Al-Hira for the Persian kings. And the Arabs used to send delegations to him to give him praise and whatnot. And this is the one that's being mentioned, that he was there, and he was brought to the commander of the faithful, yani Umar ibn Khatab radiallahu anhu. And this is what was discussed at that time, as this individual was known in that era. So this was obviously much after the various tribes that the 70 years or so, 60, 70 years whilst Rabia was still alive. Then the 60, 70 years whilst the Yemeni had taken back their land. So that's about, reaching 130, 140 years. And then obviously with the advent of Islam and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we see then Islam spreading into the Persian world around the time of Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. And you can see how that then Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu met up with these people. One thing we do see is when we are fortunate enough to go to the Haram and to go to spend time in Masjid al-Haram, is the Kaaba itself. And the Kaaba is a unique, awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping, and emotionally, and a vision which is full of emotion, and it moves you. It physically moves you, and it emotionally moves you when you see the sight of the Kaaba. And one of the things which really gives it that really kind of awe-inspiring image is the cloth which is placed over it. Otherwise you'd see kind of like brickwork, and it would be like any other house. You'd see bricks, and you'd see the mortar, and you'd see the cement that's holding the bricks together, and it wouldn't have that kind of impact. It'd be like any other house that we see. But the unique nature is this kiswa, is this cloth which is placed over the top, and it really resonates with us Who was the first person that placed this cloth on the Kaaba? Well, we hope we're going to explore that today. What we find is Ibn Ishaq mentions that this is of Tubba which is Abu Karib, which was a Tubba, and he was an Asad king of Yemen, and he wanted to go to raid the holy sanctuary of Mecca. We're going to go into his story. So we find that this Tubban Asad Abu Karib he went to Medina, and when he went to Medina, he found two Jewish rabbis there, and he brought them to Yemen. And when he returned, he went also towards Medina. And when he went through Medina, he didn't bother his inhabitants, and he left them among them a son of his. But this son of his was killed. So he eventually went against it, and he was going to destroy it and wipe out its people and cut down its date palm trees, because he was very angry and frustrated at what they'd done. And there was a clan of the Ansar, and once we go along with the story of the Prophet ﷺ, we'll get to know the Muhajirun and the Ansar. And the Muhajirun were the emigrants that came from Mecca. That was one group of Muslims, and the other group of Muslims were the Ansar. And the Ansar were those which stands for helpers, and they were the ones who were in Medina at the time the Prophet ﷺ arrived. And when the Prophet ﷺ arrived, they were the ones who assisted him. So this clan of the Ansar joined up against him, and their leader was Amr ibn Talha. And Amr ibn Talha, because Talha was his mother, that's where he gets his name from. He actually takes his genealogy from his mother. And he says that a certain man of Banu Adi ibn Najjar called Ahmar attacked and killed one of the followers of the Tubba, who he found cutting down the date clusters off one of these palm trees. And he mentioned to him that the dates belong only to those who pollinate them. And this added further to the anger of Tubba towards his people, because he thought, not only they killed my son when I wanted to exact some revenge, or when one of my men was cutting down the date palm trees, and they killed him as well. So the fight started out between them, and when this fight was started out, Tubba's anger was directed only against the Jewish people, and the Ansar were protecting them. So he mentions here, obviously the one considered as Ansaris yet, because they were still, this was before the arrival of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. This is going a number of years before that. And the Jews had obviously stayed in residence in Medina on certain conditions, and they were staying there. So when they were fighting, and Tubba was fighting, these two Jewish rabbis that I mentioned, they came up to him, and they were very learned individuals from Banu Qurayza. And when they heard that he was coming here to destroy the city and his inhabitants, he mentioned to them, he says, "Oh king, don't do this, because unless you adopt a different course, then you'll be prevented from accomplishing it, and then you will not be able to save yourself from a retribution." So Tubba said, why, how do you know this? Why are you saying this? And they mentioned to him, because this is where a prophet will migrate, and he will come from this holy sanctuary from Quraysh in times to come, and this will be his home and his abode. What the Jewish rabbis were saying to him is that, as much as you're upset that your son has been killed by these people, and then they decided to kill this individual as well, and as much as you want to exact revenge, you won't be able to, because prophecy dictates that a prophet will come here. And the only way a prophet will come here is that the people will still live here, and the people will actually be his defenders. They will be the Ansar, and that's going to happen shortly. Now, the only way that's going to happen is that the people who are living in Medina continue to live in Medina, which means you won't be able to kill them. And that means if you can't kill them, then clearly you'll come here to fight, and that means you will be killed. So they were already predicting for him what's going to happen. The Jewish individuals did say something else as well, and we also find out what did Tubba do. But we're not going to find that out today, because what we will hopefully find out is that Tubba actually leaves Medina then, and he goes to Mecca. And when he goes to Mecca, he does something quite unusual. How does Tubba link to the story of the first person who actually started by covering the Kaaba? Are the two the same, or are we going to find out something different? Well, we won't be finding that out today. Hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, you can join me in the next episode, and in the next episode we will be able to share with you what the adventures of Tubba. He leaves. Does he leave Medina? Does he attack? Does he take the advice of the two Jewish rabbis? Does he lay Medina to waste? Does he leave it? If he does he go to Mecca? Does he return back to Yemen? When he goes back to Mecca, what does he do there? Does he destroy the Kaaba, or does he honor it? For that, and to carry on our Sira to Khatam al-Nabiyyin, you're going to have to join me again on our next episode. I hope you can, so we can continue our journey. Jazakum Allah khairan ahsan al-jaza. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.